A few moments ago, we were talking about an 8-year-old girl's efforts to raise money to support an injured golden eagle at the Alberta Birds of Prey Foundation. That's one bird. A report released this week says more than 160 million boreal birds could be at risk because of development in the oil sands. Our radio blogger, Ken Chapman, has looked into the report, and he joins us with his take. Ken is a lawyer and policy analyst with Cambridge Strategies in Edmonton. Ken, welcome back.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What does the report say?
Well, the report says that if we don't change our approaches and our to an attitude in terms of habitat for birds, over a long-term generation, between like 30 and 50 years, that we could be losing up to 160 million migratory birds. What this report did was it aggregated a number of other studies, tested their hypothesis, and then looked at various areas in the boreal forest. There are some areas of the boreal forest that are much higher density than others in terms of bird population. They found that northeastern Alberta, where the oil sands are, is a fairly high dense area. So they did this in a very conservative study and a very conservative approach from over, I think it was over 10 studies that they put together and did this analysis. So what it tells us is that we have some really, really serious problems, long-term, intergenerational, with our bird population, because the boreal forest is the nursery to billions and billions of birds. And that's the bad news. The good news is we can actually do something about it.
We can. What can we do to ensure our birds are protected?
Well, there's all kinds of things. Is that there's the issues that bother them, obviously, are fragmentation of their habitat, the loss of wetlands, climate change. When they come up here now because of climate change, they come up pretty hungry. These birds, migrate hundreds and hundreds, in some cases thousands of miles, and they've got to arrive at the right time when the insects are ready for them. Well, they're arriving too late and the insects are gone. So they're starting to have problems that way. So there's another of issues about the size and pace of development that we're doing and using best practices now as opposed to just doing everything as fast as we possibly can. We now have a chance to take a bit of a breather and do things right, not just rapidly.
And who needs to take the initiative, Ken?
I think that what has to take the initiative here is the government. Ironically, the industry, in many cases, are farther ahead of the government in responding to these situations. There are some pretty good companies out there that are starting to pay attention to these kinds of issues and are wondering how they can help. The issue is, we've had the 500 dead ducks in the tailing ponds, and that was seen as by the world as negligence and indifference of Albertans to the problems of those ducks. Well, now we have a report that says that it's not an isolated incident, and in fact there's a systemic problem here, and we have to look at it in a holistic way. So there's some things that we can do. Reclamation, for example, we have to fast-track that, not just in the oil sands, but in the conventional areas of conventional oil and gas. We've got lots and lots of wells that are no longer needed, but we haven't done the reclamation for it. We can even do some biodiversity offsets. We know that we can't do anything with these oil sands lands because we're actually going to strip mine them or put in situ situations in. We can actually take other areas of the province and make sure we preserve and protect those areas for biodiversity issues, be it caribou or grizzly or birds or what have you. The integrated approach to this thing, I think, is going to be part of the future, and I think that the government of Alberta is going to be on it pretty quick. I see that the land use framework was released today. I have not had a chance to read it, but if there's issues of conservation and offsets in there, as there was in the preliminary report, then I think we've got some tools to start working with and start planning with.
Mm-hmm. But there is a real imperative to move quickly, is my sense. So how do you get the people to put the pressure on the people who can make a difference for this? Well,
that's the issue. And if I think that just listening to your guess on that prior spot, if we can get more people with the same spirit and commitment and attitude as though 8-year-old girls, I think we'll go a long way. This really does take a matter of reading the documents. It's not difficult. If you want to go and see this report, you can go to www.nrdc.org, and it's on there. And I think get familiar with the materials, get involved, and start telling your politicians and telling your administrators and getting your community involved about this. This is not just about northern Alberta. It's not just isolated. The Canadian boreal is the last intact forest on the planet, and it has a large implication for even things like climate change. We have to be just because it's big and distant from urban Albertan and urban dwellers, we've got a lot to do. Ontario has actually designated 50% of their boreal forest as preservation area. Charest, in his election in Quebec, has gone and made a political commitment to make sure that they preserve and protect 40% of their boreal forest. There were recommendations coming out of SEMA this year in Alberta, saying we should be preserving and protecting between 20 and 40% of our boreal forest for habitat protection and biodiversity. It's a matter of saying we've got to do development responsibly. And
Ken?
Yep.
Powerful argument you've presented.
Thank
you so much. Ken Chapman, a lawyer and policy analyst with Cambridge Strategies in Edmonton. You can go to his blog at ken-chapman.blogspot.com. Coming up in our next hour, Hockey Day.